Hey friend, I'm Micah McCurry and this is Bible Tract Echoes. Thank you so very much for joining me today. We're going to dive into the book of Daniel. It's been a little while since we've been there. I'm going to ask you to join me, if you would. Daniel chapter 1. We're going to introduce ourselves to this hero of the faith. I almost said lion of the faith. No joke. Maybe it's because it's a kind of that mnemonic device of Daniel and the lion's den. You always remember it that way, right? Well, today we are going to talk about Daniel, but we're not going to put him in the lion's den quite yet. We're going to introduce ourselves to him at the very beginning of this incredible book of the Bible. While you turn there, let me thank you, each and every one of you, whether you're a faithful or a first-time listener. I appreciate the fact that you've joined me today as we begin this week. You know, this broadcast, think about this, it's been around since 1958. Or thereabouts, the late 1950s. If we do the math, that means 2008 would have been 50 years. 2018 would be 60 years. We're working on 65 years of this program going out over the airwaves. And of course, those of you these days with modern technology and streaming, people are listening on podcasts, Apple Podcasts and Spotify, all those places. But some also watch on YouTube. I wonder if our founder, Dr. Paul Levine, from so many years ago, back in 1938 is when he started this ministry, Bible Tracts Incorporated. I wonder if he could have imagined where it would be today. But where are we? We are still sending out the gospel light, the word of God to all the world. And we don't plan on changing that anytime soon. Come up, thank you for coming along for the ride. Let's go to Daniel chapter number 1 and verse number 1. I told you we'd start at the beginning. Daniel chapter 1, there's some interesting and difficult names in here, so you bear with me as we do our best, all right? Daniel 1 and verse number 1, I've got one thought I want to communicate to you today. Each day of this week, we're going to zone in on one thought. The thought today, it could be summed up in, what's your purpose? Now, I think back to Micah McCurry, the younger Micah McCurry, the little boy Micah, who liked to play Cowboys and Indians or Army men, things like that. Every stick became a weapon, and I think back to that time, and I remember in my mind's eye, almost vividly, the imagination, some of which I had at that time. As a little boy, I think about playing Army men and the responsibilities, or at least as I thought of them, of an Army man. I would think of, you have the quartermaster. I knew what that was because my dad was a quartermaster, was a logistician in the United States Army. I thought of the cooks and the mechanics. You realize for every infantryman, for every door kicker, for every man that's first into the breach, there are 8 or 9 support people, medical, food, mechanics, transport, logistics, all these different types of things that allow that infantryman, the rifleman, to do his job. And it's so true. I think of missionaries on the other side of the world. There are faithful people like you who support those works. Bible Tracts Incorporated, we do not operate in a vacuum. You folks support it. But as I ask, what's your purpose? I think back to a century, not 100 years, but a century, Sentry, if I'm spelling that correctly, a guard, a watchman. And I think back, little boy Micah, maybe playing with his brothers or his friends and saying, who goes there? Maybe I'm guarding something. I don't remember what it would have been. Maybe it was a playground or something, and maybe it's getting close to dark. You can't quite see who's out there, and someone comes around sneaking. They're skulking around. Who goes there? You see some movement. And then maybe you'd say something like this. State your purpose. Who are you? And state your purpose. Well, friend, I am a child of God. My prayer is that you are as well. If you don't know that, I'd love to hear from you. I'll tell you later on in the broadcast how you can reach out. I'd love to talk to you about that most important of decisions, knowing Christ as your Savior. But if you do know you're a Christian, if you can say, my name is, and you fill in the blank, I am a Christian, I know where I'm going when I die, well, then let me ask the follow-up question, or demand from you, state your purpose. What's your purpose? Here in the book of Daniel, I want to give you just a few thoughts about your purpose and, yes, how to find your purpose, but what you're going to need along with your purpose. Daniel chapter 1, verse number 1 says this, In the 3rd year of the reign of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, came Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, unto Jerusalem and besieged it. And the Lord gave Jehoiakim, king of Judah, into his hand, with part of the vessels of the house of God, which he carried into the land of Shinar to the house of his God, and he brought the vessels into the treasure house of his God. That's a little g, God. And the king spake unto Ashpenaz, the master of his eunuchs, that he should bring certain of the children of Israel, and of the king's seed, and of the princes, children in whom was no blemish, but well favored, and skillful in all wisdom, and cunning in knowledge, and understanding science, and such as had ability in them to stand in the king's palace, and whom they might teach the learning and the tongue of the Chaldeans. And the king appointed them a daily provision of the king's meat, and of the wine which he drank, so nourishing them 3 years, that at the end thereof they might stand before the king. Now among these were of the children of Judah Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, unto whom the princes of the eunuchs gave names, for he gave unto Daniel the name of Belteshazzar, unto Hananiah of Shadrach, and unto Mishael of Meshach, and unto Azariah of Abednego. He gives them new names, Babylonian names. Verse number 8, and this is our text for today. A familiar passage, but I want you to look at it with fresh eyes. Listen with fresh ears, if you would. But Daniel purposed in his heart that he would not defile himself with the portion of the king's meat, nor with the wine which he drank. Therefore he requested of the prince of the eunuchs that he might not defile himself. Daniel had a purpose in his heart. If you asked Daniel who he was, his Babylonian name would not confuse him. Who goes there? Daniel, but the Babylonians call me Belteshazzar. He would have no problem with that, or at least telling you that. State your purpose. Well, in this particular time, I want you to think about this. The very first time we are introduced to Daniel, the very first interaction we have with him in the Bible. Of course, there's much more to the book of Daniel, an amazing story of, yes, God's grace, his leading, his protection, of bravery, courage. But the very first real account, the first time we're introduced, really verses 1 through 7 just set the stage. They just kind of give you the background. And here we go, verse number 8, but Daniel purposed in his heart that he would not. You realize this meat very likely offered unto idols, and Daniel decided, I can't be a part of that. And Daniel, we are told, decided not to do something. I would like to point out, and this is not the purpose of the message, we're going to get into 3 or 4 things that will help you with your purpose, but I do want to point out that sometimes, yes, you can purpose for positive things. You can purpose for doing things and pressing toward a mark, the prize of the high calling. We can press towards goals. We can commit and purpose in our heart that way. But there are some things in our lives that we might need to be, if I can put it this way, negative about or negative towards. And I don't mean our attitude is such that we're a jerk. I mean in this world where we are told, especially in this generation, that we, as Bible believers, are too negative, that we're all about what we're against. There is, in a small way, some truth to that. There are some things that we are against. We're not necessarily talking about forcing our beliefs on other people. What I am against worldliness. I am against the killing of children in the womb. I said children, not fetus. That may be a scientific term, and it may even be a true term, but that's still a human life there. I'm against that. I am against the consumption of alcohol. I have biblical principles for that. I believe that whoso looketh on the wine, looketh on the strong drink, whosoever is deceived thereby is not wise. That's a biblical principle you can build off of. I think our bodies are the temple of God, and I believe it would be unwise to defile it with strong drink and certain drugs and smoking and those type of things. You say, Brother McCurry, you're a relic of a bygone age. That was something the old men used to believe. Well, friend, I believe the Bible, and I believe it has some principles for us. Some of these things I'm not necessarily looking to enforce on anyone, but I do believe that there should be some things we are for, and there should be some things we are against. My desire today was to get through all 4 of these parts of purpose that I wanted to talk about, and I have gone on too long. What we're going to do is this. I'm going to give you all 4 of them, rapid fire, tomorrow. I'm going to ask you to tune in, but I do want to leave you with one thought. Daniel had grit. He was willing to be a high-friction individual. I think of sandpaper. I think of the times my dad had me doing a woodworking project, and you'd have the different grits of sandpaper. If you know anything about that, what kind of grit do you think Daniel would be? Was he a 400 grit, 200 grit, 120 grit? I don't know, but something tells me he would have been a high-friction individual. It would have been known that Daniel had purposed in his heart. And that's what I want to talk about today and what we're going to talk about tomorrow on the broadcast. I had high aspirations of getting through all of this in one day. I have failed, but I appreciate the fact that you'll tune in tomorrow, as I'm sure you will. Thank you so much for listening. In all sincerity, I'd love to hear from you. My cell number, you can text me at, is 309-316-7240. That's 309-316-7240. I'd ask you, if you would, to tune in tomorrow to Bible Tract Echoes. We're going to finish this discussion. I'll be much quicker, I promise. Lord willing and the church don't rise, we will finish our time in Daniel tomorrow. Have a great day for His glory. We'll plan on talking to you soon. God bless.
Thank you for tuning in to Bible Tract Echoes, the radio ministry of Bible Tracts Incorporated. Want to see our gospel tracts and other resources? Visit us online at BibleTractsInc.org. That's BibleTractsInc.org. Or follow us on social media to learn how you can partner with this ministry. Thanks again for listening. May the Lord richly bless you as you live for Him.